Hello everyone, how's it going? So today we're gonna building a to-do app using TypeScript, and this is how it's gonna look like. So here we have our input where we can enter the to-do. Let's do TypeScript app. We're gonna add it to the list, and once it's done it could be like marked off like this. And the reason I decided to do this in TypeScript, and in general I like using TypeScript, is because it adds this static type checking to JavaScript, and benefits of that is that it's easier to catch bugs earlier during development process, because the type errors will show up during runtime versus the compile time, which is like the usual JavaScript dynamic checking. And also it's easier to read code by other developers, and although it to keep in mind it does take more time to define types, but I think that it saves time while debugging. So let's get started. So I'm gonna start by opening up a terminal, and I'll be copying this command from Create React App website, and I'm gonna add the link in the description down below. So we paste it here, we create, I'm just gonna name it TypeScript to-do tutorial, but you can name it wherever you want. This might take a while, so I'll come back when it's ready. Alright, as you can see, our code is loaded already, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with going into these files and removing all the extra code. So I select everything here by Command A. We don't need any of the styling, and just delete it. Once we save all our files, it automatically refreshes here, as you can see. And I'll do the same for here, so we don't need this logo. Remove it from here as well, and all this needs to go. And I'll just add like header of our app, which just simply to do app. Boom, nice. Alright, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a separate components folder, and to follow best practices it's always good to have this folder, because React has this reusable components which you can define in the components folder, and you can reuse it anywhere. And the first component that I'll be creating is gonna be to-do form itself. So new file, to-do form. The TypeScript file extensions is TSX, so make sure you define every file using this extension. At the top we always have to import React, and go ahead and create functional components. So it will be export constant. We're gonna name it, make sure that the name of the component is same as the file name, and then React, and then we indicate props here. We're gonna define props later on, but it's required for TypeScript to know which type of props the component is going to be accepting. And what else we're going to do here is we want to create a state that's gonna hold the input of the to-do itself. So let's create the state by naming it new to-do, and the function to update it, so it will be state new to-do. And we're gonna be using React hook, which is useState, but the difference in here, since we're using TypeScript, would be we need to indicate which kind of type would it be, so it would be string, and also past the initial state would be empty because it hasn't been entered yet. So to use state hook, we need to import it from React, so I would do useState here, and now we can just start by creating the form itself. So form, and we would pass class name would be just to do form. And the form, the first thing that it's gonna have, it's gonna be the input of type text, of course, because it's accepting the text. Value is going to be new to do, which, oh sorry, that's not, it's an object, so the state we just created. class name also to do input, placeholder, so the text that it's gonna say before we enter anything. Let's do add a to do. We're gonna add the onChange function later on. So to do form, I just saved it, but it's not showing up here because we haven't added it in the main app file. So first, in order to add this component, we need to import it. So we import like this to do form, and then from, and then we indicate file path to recall it's inside the components folder. All right, and then we're gonna create it under the header. To do form. Yes, okay, nice. Oh, oops. It's giving us error because we haven't defined props, so that's what we're going to do right now. So to define props, we need to indicate what type of props they're going to be. So I'll create interface. Interface basically gives like a structure of the object. So it could be object and it could have like multiple fields. And name should always be the same as it's defined here. So to do form props, add to do. Oops, no, we need the. So as you can see here, it's accepting this interface, but what's happening here, it's like this destructuring. So it's accepting like the add to do field of the interface to do forms. And what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna define the type of add to do, which is here. And the best way in TypeScript to define types is just to create like a separate file for where you're gonna keep all your types. So you can go back always like the reference there. And I'll name it types.d.ts. When you actually indicate d in here, it's not gonna need to be imported into other files. So let's say type add to do equals new to do. So it would be of course of the types string, and it will just return void. All right, and we don't have to import this here. So now let's refresh it. As you can see, all right, so what we need to do also is to define the type of to do itself. So it would include two fields. First is gonna be the text itself of the to do object, which would be string, and then complete value, which would tell us if it's completed or not, and it's gonna be of type boolean. And then we need another type, which would be toggle complete, that would just be defined in the components itself, but that would update whether or not the to do is completed. So it would accept the to do object as props to do, and it's not gonna return anything. All right, now we can go back to the app file, and here we can start creating the state of to-dos itself. Since the app file would be the parent component of all the components, it's gonna pass the information of to-dos to other components. So let's create the state here, to-dos, and then set to-dos using useState. Not to forget, we also need to import the useState here. Oops. And the type, it would be accepting the array of to-dos, so we need to indicate both of that. And initial value would just be an empty array. We would start with empty array. And now here we need to also, since to do form, as you saw in here, is accepting to do form props, we need to define add to do function for it, which is just gonna take the to do and add to the existing list. So to do, equals new. And we're just gonna do quick error checking to see if the to-do we're trying to add is not empty. So it doesn't equal to empty string. If it's not, we're just gonna set the new to-do, meaning we're gonna add the one we just got to the ones we had previously. So text would be what we receive from here, and complete would be false because this to-do has just been added, so it hasn't been completed yet. Alright, and then here we're gonna indicate that add to-do is defined as this function. So now this should run. Oh, I have Boolean. Nice. So since it's not doing anything yet, but we're gonna add more functionality. Right now we need like a button where once we type it in here, we're gonna press the button and it's gonna add it to our list. So let's do that right now. We're gonna go back to the add to do form, start creating button, type would be submit, class name would be just to do button, add the to do. Oh, thinks I'm commenting it out. No, I'm not. Okay, here. Okay, so our button is gonna appear here, and right now if we type it in here, it's not updating yet because we haven't written the function which is on change. So we're gonna add that here. On change equals handle change. So now we have to define this function. So we're gonna define it here. We have to indicate what kind of props it's taking. So in this case, it's input element. And we have to, if we want to use this in React, we have to import it here, change event, and also we're gonna be needing form event, so I'm just gonna might as well import it here. All right. So what this will do is we would need to update the state we already have here. So we're just going to use this hook of like set new to do, and we're just going to pass target value. That's the target value of the input that was just inserted. So if we type here, we can see that it's been the form has been updated. Now the next thing we need is to add the function to submit actually the to-do. So we're gonna define here as well, constant handle submit, and it's gonna be taking form events. It's an HTML button element. So first we want to prevent default. This is always good to have while like creating submit buttons, so it defaults refreshing it. So we'll use function add to do, which has been passed as a props here, and it was defined in the app.tsx. And we're going to set, we also want once like you type in something here and it's been added, we also want to clear this out to make sure that the new one can be added smoothly. So we'll also set the new to do to an empty string. So let's try. Yeah, so it's adding to the list, but we can't see it displayed here because we haven't created the component that's gonna display the list. So let's do that right now. All right, let's go ahead and create the to-do form list item, which is gonna show us each to-do component. So new file, to-do list item.tsx. We're gonna import React as always. Define props. So this would actually take two types of props. First would be to do, so the to do that it would be displaying itself, and then second would be function toggle complete. So it would need this function to react when the to do is being completed. And now let's define the function itself, our component. We're gonna name it to do list item, and it's a React functional component. The props we just defined above, so, and it's of two types. First is to do, second is toggle complete. So it's gonna return created extra. So it's gonna return list item, so it would be list and we're gonna create like a label for it. Class name would be, so it depends because we want to have different styling for the ones that have been completed, as you saw in the beginning of the video, and ones that have not. So for if it's complete, then we're gonna say to do row completed, and if it's not, we're just gonna keep it as to do row. And now let's create the input itself, which is which is going to be, the type is going to be checkbox, because we want to check to complete the to-do checkbox. We're gonna, and then we haven't defined the onChange yet, but the checked would be the value that to-do.complete is giving us. And then it's gonna display to-do text. And onChange would actually be the function we just imported from the props in here. So it would be toggle complete, and it will take in to do as a value. All right. And in order to be able to use toggle complete function, we need to define it in app.tsx. So we're gonna navigate back to app.tsx and start creating the function. It's of type toggle complete, and it's taking the selected to do, and what it's doing is it's marking it as a list of complete. So it's mapping all the to-dos here, and we're going over all the list of to-dos, and if we find the one that's the one that just been selected, we're gonna update its complete field and make it the opposite of what it was before. Return the previous list with completed, not complete. And we're just gonna return the updated list. Also, what we're gonna do, we would need to save the state here, so we're gonna use our hook set to-dos and pass updated to-dos. Alright, so now in order to be able to map this function, we would need to create like a list that's gonna map it. So I'm gonna go ahead, create new file, to-do list. So it will contain all the to-dos. And we're gonna go ahead and import React. And we're also going to import the to-do list items, since that's the items we need to map. And the props would be same. It would be taking the array of to-dos and also the function toggle complete to-do list props. So to-dos would be of type array, and type array would be accepting type to-do. Toggle complete, as previously, would be of type toggle complete. Now let's go ahead, create the functional component itself. We're naming it to-do list, React FC. It's accepting to-do list props. And two types. So we want to return an unordered list, so I'll create it here, UL. So we're going to take all the to-dos that we have been passed, and then we're going to map them. And we're gonna house them in to-do list item. So in order not to get any warnings, every item, when it's a list, it needs to have a unique key. So in this case, it would just, the keys would be the text of the to-do, assuming that would be unique. To-do would be to-do, it's props, and then the last prop that it's accepting is toggle complete. If you forget the component, when you're adding the component into another component, and if you forget what props it's accepting, you can always like go back to file, like in case, like go back here and see what it's needing. But here we are. I'm just gonna remove this. And the last thing to do is we need to import the to-do list in the app.tsx and add it in our function. So import to-do list from, it's also defining components, so and we're gonna define it under the form, because that's what that's where we want the to-dos to be listed. toggle complete would be toggle complete function that we defined it here. Alright, so I think we have our to-dos here, we have add to-do function, also we have toggle complete, so I think that should be it. Let's try to run it. Okay, oh, there's a typo here because it's accepting props to-dos, not to-do. And one thing we're missing is we never defined the onClick function for the submit button, so we're gonna do that. Well, it's defined, but we never passed it, so it would be handle submit. So let's reload the... Okay, great. So let's do yoga. Okay, so as you can see, the input that we entered here has been added, and then we can check like this. Now let's update the styling. Let's go to app.css and start by... I'll update the font first. So let's do everything, make it font family. I'm a fan of Open Sans, so that's what I'm gonna do. Let's change the background color. I'm following with the linear trend right now, but we can just use like the same color. And I'm gonna be pasting, because I have it here. I'm gonna also link the GitHub URL down below, so you can just paste it, or you can just make background the same color. Alright, now we created the to-do app. It's the main container name, so let's make it display flex. Flex direction would be column. Let's justify content start, so we want it to be on the left side. Width, I'm gonna make maybe 500. Minimum height, let's also make that 500. Background of the list itself is just gonna be white. We want text aligned in the center. Oops. Margin, set it to 120. Border radius would be maybe 5 pixels. We don't want to round it. Okay, yay! Now let's update maybe how each one is looking. Add some margin and update the font size to 24. Alright, it's looking a little better. Now let's do the styling of the components that have been completed. So we name that class completed. Text decoration line through, that will kind of create impression that it's been like crossed, and lower the opacity, maybe do it 0.4. Yeah, you can see here. Now let's start making updates to the form itself. Add the margin. We'll make this 32 pixels. Add some padding into it. Remove any borders, make it round. Pointer, no outline. I want this also to be gradient, so I'm just gonna copy and paste it in here. And the color of the text, we want it white. The code for that is 3Fs. capitalize the text. Alright, yeah. Now let's update the input itself so it kind of like matches the button here. To do input, and once again, if you forgot like how you named your components, you can always open inspector, which is Command Option I, and you can always use this arrow to expand components and see their like class names. So we have to do input. We're gonna add some padding. We're gonna make the side of it also rounded, so 20 pixels, 0, 0. So here we made this side rounded, and here we're gonna make it this side so it kind of like matches. And make like a smaller border, like a gray one, so 149 FFF. Maybe, okay, no outline. Oh, I did that already. Width, make it a little bigger. Background transparent. Okay, maybe we want the outline of, let's do a different color. Let me DFE. Okay, that's like a light gray. Now we want to edit the function, I mean the input itself. So it would be .edit. Just add some light border to it. I'm gonna copy the color code. And I'm also gonna copy the background because I want it to be gradient for the to the button. All right. Let's see what we have here. Now let's update the container itself. Or we can update the list right now. So it would just be the unordered list. What we want is to remove the bullet types. So list type would be set to none. Padding also 0 because it adds automatic paddings when you create the unordered list usually. And start updating the rows for the list to the row. Display flex. Center. We're gonna add like a little shadow around the row, so it's, I'm just gonna copy the code for that. and a little bit margin. Padding as well. Border radius should just make it rounded, so I'll set it to 20 pixels. Width, make it like 80% of the container. Okay, so now what we are left with is to edit the row input. Just add a little bit margin. And to do, let's see what's the form. Oh, let's add another class in here. All right, great. Oh, I left. So we wrapped the form in To-Do App class, and we defined the styling for the To-Do App over here. All right, and then this is how it looks like. So our app is done. Thank you so much for watching. I'm planning to do more TypeScript tutorials, so make sure to subscribe and let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Thank you.